And yesterday, he had an experience against Magnus Carlsen when he had the white pieces. A lot of pressure there. Now things have changed up. We see the Caro-Kann defense. Black is temporarily sacrificed a pawn, but will win that back on this turn. And Fedoseev, this is one of his favorite openings with white with black, one of his highest scoring openings. Now, however, a hit against a weak spot on G7. Don't bring your queen out too early, folks, unless you're a grandmaster and you know when to get away with it. White's queen doing some really annoying work there. And now, after creating weakness, it's time to get castled. Robert, I've got to say, the time advantage, having an extra couple of minutes in what is likely to be a complicated middle game now, it surely will stand Nepomniachtchi in good stead.
Yeah, there's something about this opening that I don't like, even if you give me a ton of time from the black side. Look at all these holes in the dark squares. And this bishop on c5, well, if it gets back to g7, maybe I feel a little bit better, but still not so fantastic. So that wasn't me. I thought I misclicked. He actually just brought his bishop back to f8, Tanya. That is one of the wildest predictions I've had.
That's insane. It reminds me of your prediction of bishop to c7. I mean, how did that even happen? I still think about it. When it was a one-move blunder, and I think you dropped it, and Magnus dropped it, and right now, bishop to f8, another bishop move. Robert the Prophet strikes again. The bishop does land on g7, but I think you can explain this one. The dark square weakness that you were pointing out. For Black's king to be safe on the king side, it's so critical for Black to have that Fianchetto bishop.
Oh, I think we should rename you Robert Fedoseev, Robert say Hess, because it's just you and Vladimir here. You're so in sync, and the downside, I guess, behind this bishop maneuver is it costs a lot of time. Look how many white pieces are out there pouring forward already. White's queen, all the minor pieces, the white rook in the center in e1. Yes, the pawn structure is blocked for now, but if things open up, white is by far the more ready to pounce. So Fedoseev living life on the edge. Robert, he's played your maneuver. He's now attacking the white e5 pawn. Do you see him unraveling, untangling from this position?
I think he's doing a good job thus far because he's forcing Jan to slow down. And now we see that the difference in clock is 2 minutes. So I think from that perspective, Fedoseev has to be happy, but he hasn't developed any of his pieces. If I'm Jan Nepomniachtchi, I don't want to give up this central pawn. Maybe there are some tactics available to white that allow you to give up e5 because the black king remains in the center. But I probably would just drop my bishop back to f4. I know I put my bishop on g5 a turn ago, but I want to keep this pawn on e5, and he does it in a different way with queen to g3. I like that as well. So, Tanya, I would say from a strategic point, white's doing well, but I think Fedoseev, he may be in this comfort zone of this wily type of opening where he feels at home.
He's going to feel more at home once that knight from g8 can come out. And the only path that I see is from e7. He does hit the bishop right now, so forcing Jan to take a decision. You've got to fall back with that bishop. And then I'm expecting Fedoseev to continue with his development, knight to e7. Maybe someday it will land on f5, but you've got to be careful. You've got to watch out before you make that move. Go knight e7, get your king to safety, put that bishop on d7, start advancing the b pawn. And it does look like things have started looking slightly more playable for black. More space for white, though. That said, David, bishop falls back to f4. Do you think that Jan should be happier out of the opening outcome right now?
Jan would not complain if you offered him this position with an extra minute on his clock beforehand. But there is a bit of pressure now. Long-term, black has a lot of potential. Black is rock solid. Black has no real weaknesses. If pieces start to disappear, if knights, bishops, queens get traded off, actually, if anyone's better, it's going to be black due to having 2 central pawns, white only having 1 in the center. White's e5 pawn looks very strong now, but could become a weakness. So time is very much of the essence in Armageddon, as always, but also on the board. Pawn to a3 might look like a timid move, but watch out if black ever has the courage to castle queenside. White will... Oh, he's setting it up now with bishop d7. White will throw pawns forward. Pawn to b4, pawn to b5, and explode that flank. So really, really cagey stuff right now. I think Jan needs to act quickly. Pawn to h4. He's kind of bluffing now. He's playing on both sides of the board with pawns. He's asking where the black king is going to go. And no, this isn't a mouse flip either, Robert. King to f8.
This is a standard plan when your kingside is under attack. That leaves your rook as a defensive piece, and white can't team up on it. But I love the move from Jan Nepomniachtchi. Knight d1, knight e3, knight g4, and the h6 pawn and the f6 square are accessible from the knight. So this knight is doing a bit of dancing. It's going on a real adventure. And black says, I'm not even going to think about your knight getting there. Tanya, I have to say, I like this change in pawn structure for black because now the position isn't as one-sided.
And I think this last move really explains that king sidestep. It wasn't a mouse slip. It was a move with a plan. The king from f8 defended that bishop in g7, so allowing Fedoseev to go knight to f5, trade off, having double pawns, but opening up the G line for a counterplay. So again, a double-edged game, but let's remind everyone that Fedoseev needs only a draw. It's so important for him to keep the clock under control and to not get the position super messy, because for Jan, he has to go all out. He's the one who's in a must-win game right now. So this kind of complication, this kind of a double-edged situation, does it seem to favor Jan more than Fedoseev?
Especially after these last couple of moves, Jan suddenly he's played 2 or 3 quick instant replies, and look at the white pawns. He's gained all the space on the center, on the queen side. Yes, this last move given a question mark, but white's knight has the most beautiful perch you'll ever see, an outpost on d4. So Jan, I think he's got enough pieces, enough control here to guarantee a long game, and with 2 extra minutes on the clock in Armageddon, no increment, that could be decisive. I would love to play 2 moves in a row if I could with white. I was going to say knight d4 and pawn to h5 just to stop any knight g6 ideas. And it just feels like Jan, he's in his element right now. It's not a winning advantage. It's not even maybe a significant advantage, but Fedoseev, 4 minutes on the clock, it's not going to be easy at all. Robert, do you think, king to g8, first of all, with the blue arrow there. Do you think that's natural? I was going to say, do you think Fedoseev is comfortable with his position?
Oh, clearly king to g8 wasn't that natural because he brings his rook to g8, and how could you blame him bringing his rook to an open line where the enemy queen is? But this bishop on g7 can't move, so tactically speaking, this isn't going to work out for black. You don't want to drop this h6 pawn. So this position is difficult for both sides. The bishop on a4, that is a nasty piece because you can't bring a rook to d1, you can't march your pawns forward on b4 and c5. So I think both sides have things to be happy about. I see the engine evaluation off the side. I don't care about that. Both players are recognizing that it's not easy to break through. So Tanya, and look at white getting the queen out the way. What is the actual plan for either side, frankly?
We're going to wait and watch that being played out. I think there are 2 ideas. Black can perhaps aim at trying to trade off that very strong knight on d4, eventually come with his own knight to c6, trying to exchange as many pieces as possible. But that said, the current position, with the number of pieces on the board, with both players, Fedoseev under 5 minutes and Jan Nepomniachtchi touching the 5-minute mark, and what we have in front of us, I think we're in for a wild time scramble in this one. And it is going to come into who's faster on the mouse, who's got that extra seconds on the clock. I'm expecting some piece trades to happen, and he does it knight c6 on the board, Robert. A good decision by Fedoseev.
It is a good decision, and he needs to control those light squares. And when it's a closed position, knights are often superior to bishops. So that's why there's one knight on d4. Perhaps a second knight can replace it because the knight appears over the block position. Whereas bishops, if there was a bishop on d4 instead, it would stare into its own pawn. So that's why these knights are looking so promising. And that is why Tanya recommended the trade of these pieces. So David, if these knights, or maybe not even say if, when these knights come off the board, do you see how to further make progress? Because it looks like a completely blockaded position.
It's tough. It's not easy. And therefore, kind of with the lack of obvious plans, I'm inclined to agree with Tanya and say it's going to be a time scramble, pretty much guaranteed. And at some point, you just need to make moves, even if you're not kind of progressing, advancing your position, not kind of making inroads into kind of black's camp, for example, if you're Jan Nepomniachtchi. King h2, a great move, for example. You just tease your opponent, bring that rook to g1, pretend you're going to play g4. Maybe you do play pawn to g4. Either way, you've got extra time on the clock, and there we go. He's now attacking, and it's far easier to attack, as we all know, than it is to defend with that clock ticking down. So under 4 minutes now, Fedoseev, big decision. Does he have to take on g4, allow the white knight closer to that black king? The black king is almost actually in a mating net as it is. No real escape squares. Fedoseev presses the chaos button instead. Pawn to f6. Robert, clock, board, it's all just exploded in this last couple of moves.
It certainly has. And if G takes F5 is the only move to leave white with the advantage, this position is much trickier than the evaluation bar would let us believe. Now, Jan, this was a natural move for him. If this pawn takes on E5, yes, it looks like a fork as G takes F, received an exclamation point, but there's a queen on F3, there is a king on F8. You don't want to see all the pieces get out the way, so there will be tactics that allow white not just to save the material, but win some material. So in this position, I think if you're Vladimir, you just slide your queen on over to F7. It's going to be a bad position, but at least the white king doesn't feel that safe. Tanya, we could see the makings of a ladder checkmate with a rook on the G file, and if this queen somehow, some way, can get to a square like H4.
Whoa, and I'm just looking at the decision that Fedoseev has just taken, and I was wondering, is this even possible? Because I thought that white could actually push the E pawn and create play against the double pawns, but he goes for a more direct idea, doesn't sacrifice the pawn, opens up the bishop. But the downside of doing it this way, Robert, to me is that black gets play as well. Grabbing on F6, now that Fedoseev's bishop is active, I think that gives black some hope in this position. I was expecting E6 at that moment.
Yeah, that would have been a nice move instead of capturing it. David, now that we're here, we can revisit that moment a little bit later. This knight on E3 is pinned, and this white king on H2. If this black king slinks to the corner, whose king do you think is actually safer?
I would love to be Fedoseev suddenly out of the blue, not just because objectively maybe he's got more chances now, but it's just pure lack of control. It's an irrational position. Nepomniachtchi has no idea what's going on. We kind of have to calculate here just to try and figure out who's better. But as you say, if the black queen activates, if the black rook on E8 gets one more move, comes down to E4, I really fear for the white king. The black king, at least black's moves are easy. That's all you want in a time scramble. Knight takes pawn now. Check, forcing the black king into the corner. And yeah, that white king, look at the air around it. Look at all the possible checkmating patterns. There's so many of them. I agree, Robert. The evaluation bar still favors white, but this has been turning. And if momentum continues as it is, I think Fedoseev, he's got great chances now. Suddenly, the narrow path that white has to tread, it's only getting narrower and narrower every single move. What do you even play here with white? Your rook is hanging in the center. Nepomniachtchi, I wouldn't be surprised if he tanks now and kind of slips up. It's so easy to go wrong.
Wow, this position has turned completely. And Tanya, we've talked about Fedoseev. Yesterday against Magnus Carlsen, it looked like he was on his way down to the loser's bracket, and he won a game on time. Then in Armageddon, he had the upper hand. He couldn't find the tactical sequence. Magnus was able to escape with the match victory. And here, it looked like everything was going wrong for Vladimir, and now his king has scurried on over to the corner. Vladimir is actually the one ahead on time. Let's not forget, we're not getting these 2 seconds of increment with every turn. Jan is in serious time trouble now.
This is Armageddon. Jan has to win this game. He's got the white pieces. He's got no increment. He's below on the clock. It's his rooks that are hanging right now. Jan does look calm, but I don't think he's going to be that calm on the inside. The first big question is, what is his next move? I would think that he would just trade on E8 immediately, right? My rook on D4 is hanging. My rook on E1 is hanging. What is he thinking about right now? What are the other moves? Is rook E4? Rook E4 is not even possible. What am I saying? I mean, what do you even play here?
There's no easy moves, that's the problem. But he's got to just choose something, for better or worse. He's got to trade rooks, as you say, Tanya. Maybe leave that white rook on D4. And wow, he was calculating this. But look at the evaluation bar. We said it. So easy to go wrong. Double question mark move. I'm wondering what he has in store if the black dark square bishop just takes that white rook, a free piece in the center. He's got to go for checkmate now against the black king, but maybe there isn't one. He's now down a minute on the clock. I'm thinking again, Robert, he's miscalculated. He's missed something here.
And look at this, the blue arrow, it strikes. Queen takes F7, a queen sacrifice, because the rook on E1 is loose at the end, and black will have 2 rooks and a bishop and an attack against the white king. So this is going to be too much material in black's favor. Fedoseev, look at him. He is locked in, and he senses the moment for Jan Nepomniachtchi. It's a bad sign when you give away a rook and then you still think afterwards his time in the chessable masters could come to an end in the next few moves.
But I think, Robert, it's critical for Fedoseev to play this move, because if you were to move up with your king, which he does, can't white give a check on D3, trade on E8, and pick up the bishop on D4?
Oh.
Did you see Nepomniachtchi lean back with surprise there? He feels that he's got a second life now, and he has to go for that variation that you mentioned, Tanya. It's strictly forced, but more importantly, he needs to move. 1 minute left. It's still chaotic. We're miles away from a decision on this game, from the climax. He needs to move 1 minute. It's bullet chess now. He's living life on the edge.
It's going to be about flagging. David, this is going to be about flagging, and it's game on right now. He goes for this, gives a check.
Rook e4, the blue arrow is here. It's the only move, and it makes sense to keep the bishop defended. If you think you're going to attack a knight, queen g6 would be checkmate. Oh, he walked into a mating. He walked into a mating net.
Oh my gosh, now he's only got one legal move he has to block, and White's just motoring forward. White's going to checkmate or win the black queen. The black bishop is overworked, overloaded. He's got to flag Nepomniachtchi now, only chance. He's down a queen for rook and bishop. He's lost.
Oh, that was a tragic turnaround, but I will say there are still chances for black thanks to this pawn on d4. And it's not going to be, an easy win for white, whose own king is in trouble. Tanya, we have seen crazier things happen than a black win in this game.
I completely agree with you. And for Jan Nepomniachtchi, he's got to wrap it up with just 40 seconds, no increment. The two bishops super active, f3 pawn, always under fire. Look at that eval bar, already a mistake by Jan. Can black actually just capture on f3 now?
Maybe he can. He's considering it. He can win back the white queen immediately, but first he grabs another pawn, and white gives a check, another check, but all of the white pawns are dropping. A draw is good enough for black to progress here, and you cannot deliver checkmate with a queen alone. So he's using his bishop, but he's dropping all his pawns here, Robert.
Yeah, and now you can just keep trading pieces. And in fact, I think black will have a fortress at the end. You put your rook on the 7th rank, or actually, why not this configuration? These pieces are untouchable here. Everything protects something else. And if this rook gets to d7, how do you expect to win this game with a rook behind a pass pawn? What a defense from Fedoseev.
Unbelievable.
He walked to a mate.
King h6.
King h6. Queen to e8 is the checkmate. Jan Nepomniachtchi is one move away from winning this. There's no way to fight it. Rook e7 runs into queen f6 and you pick up the rook.
Over so quickly, so suddenly. It's just going to win the black rook now. And nothing to be done. It's all about flagging. 23 seconds. Look at the speed they're going to show. They're going to display, but white has an extra queen. Surely this is over now. Will we see another comeback? No more pre-moves. Nepomniachtchi, he's got this in the bag. He's going to win.
The thing about Jan Nepomniachtchi, she's also a great bullet player. And this one, now it's 2 queens on the board. Yeah. It's done.
Oh my gosh, and Vladimir Fedoseev so close yet so far, and Jan Nepomniachtchi throwing his hands in the air. Unbelievable Armageddon. Oh my God. Wow.
I don't have the words. I really don't have the words for what we just saw. And, Fedoseev, his lights were flickering, but they've completely dimmed. His tournament is done with. In the Chessable Masters, he's been a wrecking ball of sorts. He took down Alireza Firouzja. He gave Magnus